Hello, eighth graders. All right, hopefully your test went well. If you have not turned that in, please make sure you do so. Okay, again, that does go in as a test grade. It's under the Chapter 7 assessment in Power School. If you have questions, forgot to do it, whatever the case may be, please stay in touch with me. Okay. Um, I think that's all I have about it. I will obviously come out with a review video once they're all turned in. So the sooner you all turn your assessment in, the sooner I can send out that video so that you can go over the answers to your test. Okay. It will go in the grade book as soon as I get them all. If you have any questions, again, please email me about that. If you have not done it, turn it in. Okay. Again, it is a mandatory grade, just like normal school. All right, so what we're going to do today is move on to chapter 8, which is probably the most interesting section in the entire textbook, okay? It's kind of the one we've been waiting for all year. We focused on how the United States started and how we're getting up to this point. Chapter 8 finally focuses on the Civil War, okay? So this is probably the most interesting section within the book. And it deals with the time period 1820 to 1865. 8.1 focuses on conflicts and compromises. Now, the reason we have to start with this is because one day people did not just wake up in the United States and go, we're going to fight. Okay, there were a bunch of events and compromises and fights that led to the Civil War starting in the United States, which of course was the North versus the South. Okay, so at this time, okay, in 1819, there were 11 free states and 11 slave states, okay, which means there was an even number of both. So in the government or Senate, both sides, slavery and those who were against slavery, had equal votes when trying to make laws. Okay, so it was fair. However, okay, we started to get into the idea of sectionalism, which means that in that section, like a piece of something, a sectionalism. Okay, so people from their part, so Southern people are going to vote for things that the South wants, even if it doesn't help them. So, for example, people who don't own slaves in the South are going to vote for things that help slavery because it helps the South. People in the North, even if you're not really against slavery, you're going to vote for things that are against slavery because that's what you're doing. You're voting for your section. Okay? What happens is because there's 11 on each side, it's fair, like I said earlier, but in 1819, Missouri asked to be part of the United States. They want to be part of the Union. Okay, and they want to be a slave state. All right, which means there would be 12 slave states and 11 free states, which of course the free states don't like because they would not have as much power in the government. They could easily be outvoted. Okay, so what happens is they get into a bunch of fights. Henry Clay is still around. Okay, he's making these compromises. He actually comes up with another one here. It's called the Missouri Compromise. He says, fine, Missouri can be a slave state if Maine, who also just asked to be a state, can be a free state. Everybody's like, yeah, that's sure. That's a good idea. Okay. So now there's 12 of each one. Missouri and Maine both get to be states. Okay. Maine is a free state. Missouri becomes a slave state. Along with the Missouri and Maine becoming a state, the Missouri Compromise says that anything below the longitude line of Missouri can have slaves. Anything north of that, with the exception of the state of Missouri, cannot have slaves. Okay. So at the bottom of Missouri and down can have slaves in Missouri itself, which is above that line. Okay, so there's one state above that line and everybody else below it. Everybody else besides Missouri, above that line, slavery is illegal. That's what this compromise says. And the South's like, yeah, okay, that's not a bad idea. We'll take that. Okay, so now everybody's happy again for a while. All right, there's 12 of each. Slavery is illegal in the South. It's illegal above that line, okay, in the North. So everybody's happy for the time being. Now, we kind of have a problem because that only applies to the Louisiana Purchase, which on page 431 is that kind of green and orange section where you see that line where it says 36 degrees, 30 feet, okay, or degree, sorry, that line of latitude there. All right. What we're going to discuss now is another problem that comes up, okay? The western expansion, so that area we took from Mexico, okay, like California, New Mexico, Utah region, Nevada, okay, is now going to have a problem because is slavery legal there or is it not? Because the Missouri Compromise only applied to the Louisiana Purchase. So now what do we do again? Okay. Well, of course, people argue slavery should be legal in the West. Slavery should not be illegal in the West. People should vote. Okay. Everybody has different ideas. All right. So eventually, the first thing they come up with is called the Wilmot Proviso. And the reason it's called the Wilmot Proviso is the man who came up with it, his name is Wilmot. All right, fair enough. Easy. he says that slavery should be illegal in all parts of the West. It just is terrible. And everybody in the North really likes this idea. Of course, everybody in the South says that's stupid. Okay? So right away, they throw his idea out. It passes in the House. The Senate fails it instantly. Done. Okay? Some other people say that slavery should be legal in the West. It's a new territory. States, they get to do what they want. And then finally, there's the people who believe in popular sovereignty. Popular sovereignty is a really fancy way of saying that people get to vote for what they want. So if more people vote for slavery than vote against slavery, that state should get to have slavery. And likewise, if more people vote for no slavery than they do for slavery, then there's no slavery. Okay, that's another thought process at this time, and it becomes a very popular one. Okay. Amongst this, okay, this debate, this between political parties, because Northern Democrats and Whigs both don't like slavery. Okay. However, people in the South, so if you're a Southern Democrat, you do like slavery. So they come up with this new political party called the Free Soil Party. Okay, and what this is it's mainly made up of people who do not want slavery in the West. Okay, so it didn't matter what political party they were part of. They joined this because they said, we do not want slavery in the West, no matter what. Okay, there are actually very few abolitionists, which are people who don't like slavery, that join this group. Okay, they didn't want to eliminate, the Free Soil Party did not want to eliminate all slavery. They did not want to eliminate slavery in the South. They wanted to make sure that there was not slavery in the West. So that's kind of the important thing about the Free Soil Party. Okay. And they come up to this election in 1848. The Whigs choose Zachary Taylor. Okay, the Democrats choose Lewis Cass of Michigan. And then finally, the Free Soil Party chooses somebody who's already been a president, Martin Van Buren, okay, to run as their, I don't know what you want, candidate, okay? So during the election, Zach Taylor wins, okay? He wins because he's a slave owner from Louisiana, even though he's a Whig, okay? So people from the South are like, oh, he must like slavery. Well, that really wasn't the case. But that's why they voted for him. Okay, so that Lewis Cass, the Democrat guy who did like slavery, did not win. Zachary Taylor did. But the most important thing here is that the Free Soil person, Martin Van Buren, actually got 13% of the vote. Okay, which is not much, but it's impressive because it proves that a lot of people are saying that slavery in the West is a bad thing. Okay, people are willing to vote for that, which is an important thing at this time. Even though we're kind of having these arguments still, everything's really kind of okay. There's an equal number of states. Nobody's really fighting because we all have the same amount of power. That changes. When California says we want to be part of the Union and we want to be a free state, the South throws a fit. Okay, they're like, that's not fair. California's really big. They don't want to be a slave state. And when California said they wanted to be a free state, there were other states like Nevada and New Mexico and all those over there, Utah, okay, that say we also do not want to be, we want to be free states. So this is making the South go, holy cow, we're going to get our butts kicked anytime there's a vote. This can't happen. Okay, they are not happy about it. They're so not happy, in fact, that California and all these states want to join as free states that they threaten to secede. Okay, and what secede means is it's a really fancy word for move away. Okay, so the South says if this happens, we're gonna make our own country. We're just kind of gonna leave the Union and we're gonna do our own thing. Now, this causes a problem because the United States of America does not like it when a state goes, you know what, we think we're just gonna leave and we're kind of gonna do our own thing. That's not good. Okay, that's not something the country will just let you do. If Wisconsin wanted to break away and be its own country, not gonna happen. Okay, they do not want you to leave. So therefore, all these senators and all these leaders start to argue. Okay, John C. Calhoun, remember if you hearing me talk about it in class, the South Carolina rule, right? Okay, John C. Calhoun is a senator from South Carolina, and he's caused some problems before. This time, he's getting very old now. He says if we don't get what we want, where all these fugitive slaves are returned to us and the South can have slaves and we get all that stuff, we're going to leave. And if you're not going to let us leave peacefully, we will fight you. That's what John C. Calhoun says. Okay? The North does not like to hear this. All those senators, they're like, well, this is going to lead to a civil war. So naturally, they try and do anything they can to stop this civil war from happening. They're trying to make compromises. In fact, they come up with they're like, fine, we'll return your slaves to you. Okay, fine. Just don't break away. Don't start a civil war. Okay, Daniel Webster is that senator from Massachusetts. Okay, he's from the North. He does not like slavery, but he realizes that slavery or a civil war would be a very bad thing. So he's like, you know what? Fine. Just keep your slavery in the South. We'll return your slaves to you. Just don't break away. Okay. However, the South is still not super happy because they know the North really does not want them to have slaves. Okay. Eventually, in Senate, they come up with what's called the Compromise of 1850. Okay. And what this does is it has 5 big points to it. Okay. The first, it allows California to enter as a free state. The North gets what it wants. Secondly, it divides the rest of the Mexican cession into the territories of New Mexico and Utah. So it creates 2 more states. Okay. Another good thing for the North. Why? Because they're probably going to be free states. Okay. Voters in each would decide the slavery question according to popular sovereignty, so which means they would have a vote. However, the North decides to make them into states because they know that people are probably going to vote against slavery. Okay. Third, it ends the slave trade in Washington, D.C. They're like, you know what? It looks really bad that we're trading slaves in our nation's capital. So another part of this deal was that they ended slave trade in Washington, D.C. Fourth, it had a strict fugitive slave law. So far, the first 3 points really help the North. Okay? The fourth point helps the South because this is what they wanted. They said, if our slaves run away, you have to give them back or it's against the law. Okay, so what they do is they come up with this law that says if you see a slave running away and you don't return them, you can be put in jail and fined up to $1,000, which is a lot of money at that time. And it's a lot of money now, but it was even more money then. Okay, so that's something to keep in mind. And finally, fifth, it settled a border dispute between Texas and New Mexico, which isn't super important in this context. Okay, so the first 4 points are really, really, really important. So that's something to keep in mind when you're going through getting ready to answer either the guided reading or the assessment for Chapter 8. Look at the Compromise of 1850. Okay, so part of the Compromise of 1850 was called the Fugitive Slave Act, which, like I told you earlier, is a law that says you have to return slaves that have run away or you can be put in jail or fined. Okay, Northerners did not like this. Okay, and the reason why is because it feels to them like they are now a part of slavery. Okay, like now I'm a bad person because I have to send that poor slave who's running away back, or it's against the law. Okay, so naturally they don't like that. Okay, in fact, they start to break this law by having people, these mobs, kind of try and break these people away from their captors, and it becomes one big mess in the North. Okay, because these people should be following the laws, which are bad. Okay, so that's that civil disobedience thing we talked about where a law is bad, so people are breaking it non-violently. Okay, so they're starting to break this law in the North, even though it says clearly that they have to return them. All right, the effects of the Compromise of 1850 on page 437 kind of fixes the situation for now. Both sides get what they want. The North gets those free states. The South gets the Fugitive Slave Act. Okay, so both really get what they want. However, it does not fix everything, like everything else at this time. North and the South still don't like each other, right? Because at the heart of it all, the South knows the North does not want slaves. So therefore, they're going to keep trying to take them away, even though they compromise for now. Okay, so it's kind of like when you make a deal with somebody, you loan somebody $5 and you know that they're never going to give it back. Okay, you always know that. It's the same thing between the North and the South here. The North and the South might have come up with a deal that kind of helps them stay together for now, but the South knows that the North wants their slaves taken away. Okay. Finally, the last thing we're going to talk about in this section is a book that convinced a lot of Northerners that slavery was bad. So far, Northerners, more and more of them are starting to realize that slavery is bad. Finally, though, Harriet Beecher Stowe comes out with a book called Uncle Tom's Cabin. And we've talked about this in class before in brief references. Okay, there's a section about it in page 438 in your textbook. This book, it describes a slave, okay, who's bought by a very mean owner who, when the slave would not, named Tom, would not tell this owner where 2 runaway slaves were, he gets whipped to death. Okay, now I guess in this book it says in here that there's a lot of exaggerations and there's a lot of misinformation, which means it's not right, okay, because Harriet Beecher Stowe had never been on a slave farm. Fair enough. Okay. But the idea of writing this book was to convince Northerners that slavery was bad, which it is. Okay. And that book did a really, really good job of it. All right. Of course, people from the South are like, that person has never lived on a slave farm. How would they know what it's like? This book is not true. But that didn't really help the case. People were reading this book and they were believing it, which made people in the North think that slavery was really, really bad. And it started to convince people in the North to fight against slavery, which is what the book was intended to do. Okay? If you had questions about anything that I talked about today, about chapter or section 8.1, please feel free to email me or set up a conference time. Okay, I'd be more than happy to help you. Make sure you get your Chapter 7 assessment in if you have not done so already. Okay? If you have questions, please let me know. I hope you're staying healthy and have a good day. Bye.